Chapter 4: Controlling Your Senses So You Can Get What You Want. Now, this chapter deals with our sensory factors, and we're going to get into those. The most important part about this chapter itself is that you can think independent of circumstances. So, instead of the physical world controlling your thinking, you want your thinking to control the state of your physical world. Now, throughout this chapter, you're going to hear how that actually works, because this is exactly what people do when they create stuff. So, a small percentage of humanity creates all sorts of things like inventions, a business, a great career for themselves, but usually it happens unconsciously, and the people looking at them don't realize that it's all based on the fact that they are living from a state of a vision. They're not living according to their senses at all. Now, throughout this chapter, I also mentioned that we don't want to get delusional. That's actually very important, because what I mean by controlling our senses is simply that we want to use the sensory factors in order to observe and walk and move through this physical world pretty much without getting into trouble, but that is about as far as it should go. We have to use our thoughts, our imagination, in order to determine the sort of reality we're going to live in. That is how humanity creates stuff. Whether it's an individual or a group of people, they all operate with a vision, and then that vision becomes visible to all of us through our senses. So it's a very important chapter for you to study and contemplate. Now, as the beginning of the chapter says, this is a very important chapter concerning our senses. We can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Our senses help us understand the world around us. But did you know it's also one of the biggest obstacles we face when it comes down to achieving our dreams? People let their senses dictate what they can or cannot achieve. Let me try and describe this process. Once you know what you want, are you able to see any proof, if at all, whether you can truly achieve the very dream you now hold? Or are you still aware of certain limitations that might hold you back? More often than not, the latter is the case. How can we overcome the very things that we feel are holding us back? Things that we observe in our current circumstances? Now, that's what this chapter is all about. I regularly catch myself looking around in my world for proof that I'm on the right track. I might look at how fast certain goals are growing. I might obsess over the amount of people I'm currently reaching. As I'm doing this, I might notice growth which we can consider positive. However, at the same time, I'm aware my own dreams can be a lot bigger than the things I'm currently observing. If I don't watch out, this might generate negative emotions within my own mind. There we have evidence I temporarily let my senses dictate whether I'm on the right track or not. What I needed to learn was to trust in my own imagination. Success and growth depend on the effectiveness and quality of my own actions. So instead of worrying about how many people I may or may not reach with my work, I'm better off focusing my imagination on the vision of what I still aim to achieve. As long as I'm living through my imagination, everything will be alright. And the same will work for you. Imagine I started writing this book and immediately I worry about the amount of people I would reach. The only reason I would even worry about it is because in this very moment, my senses confirm not a lot of people know who I am as an author. Would this mentality help me get closer to the realization of my own dreams? Our response to this question should be no. This will never help anyone. By using our imagination, we can actually see ourselves already in possession of what we want. We can imagine as if we already achieved our dreams. This vision then should become the very thing that guides our actions. It's our goal with this book to help you get what you want. All of this so far would be inner mental work on your part. You can start doing this no matter where you are or how good or bad you might think your life is. Whether you are rich or poor, lonely or not, it doesn't matter where you are physically. Everything depends on your own mentality. And if your mind is influenced by your senses, you're not in the domain of limitless potential, but in the domain of limitation. We all know there's probably certain limits to our physical potential, but so far as we know, we haven't reached that limit yet. Undoubtedly, there's a lot we have not yet discovered about our potential. Stuff that will be uncovered over the upcoming centuries. One thing I do know is this. Imagination is limitless, and it will be like this until the very end of time. Through your imagination, you mentally see bigger and better versions of yourself. What I mean by that is that it's almost like a different person achieves the things you're dreaming of. But this is obviously not true. If you had achieved your dreams right in this moment, you're simply the same person acting on a more powerful level. If your goal is to lose weight or develop more muscles, you might look different physically, but that's about as far as it goes. Other people would still know you're the same person. However, the real change in you takes place inside of your own consciousness. You can only achieve whatever you build up inside your own mind first. If our mind is constantly distracted by our senses, we can't build ourselves up effectively. If you can look at yourself by using your imagination and see the sort of person you would be were your dreams already realized, then you're looking with the eyes of limitless potential. If you look at yourself using only your senses, you are looking with the eyes of limitation. How do we improve the world? By first building a clear vision of a better world. How do you improve your life and get what you want? By first building the vision of what you want. Once you have a vision, it should dominate your mind, because then you'll be able to make it easier to let go of current circumstances and any of the limitations you might face. If this sounds difficult, I'll be honest, it's certainly something that takes time, and most of all, it takes a daily, conscious approach. If we don't consciously train ourselves this way on a daily basis, we walk the risk of falling back into our old limiting behavior. If we can approach our lives using our imagination, your life will transform like night and day. You can improve all of your relationships if you operate with an awakened imagination. Instead of letting your own positive emotions be dictated by whether someone does or does not deserve it, we learn to express our positive emotions to the entire universe without holding back. In many religions, that's what they call being enlightened. But true spiritual enlightenment means we achieve that state of being permanently. Again, it should become clear to us, in order to even remotely achieve this state of being, we have to operate through our imagination and not through our senses. What you visualize inside your mind is just as real as what you can observe with your physical eyes. It exists in a different dimension. At least that's how I would describe it. Whatever it is you want, you already possess inside your imagination. That's why you desire to have it physically. You want to have it in such a way that you can see, hear, taste, smell, and touch it, so that you can actually share it with other people. Before we can do that, we have to be fully absorbed in our own dreams. It's not something that will be thrown into your lap without any effort. It's something we have to become in expression. Now let's look at it from another angle. When we were still in school, we would receive a report card. This would tell us our grades in school and show us what sort of student we were. In reality, this isn't entirely accurate. It only showed how good you were at answering the questions they gave you a few weeks ago. It doesn't tell us anything about our real potential. Sadly, we are letting it influence us. If grades are low, we are of the opinion we must be a bad student. Again, what it really showed is that the student in question didn't have his or her heart invested into their studies. This is another way we are living through our senses instead of our imagination. If we truly let grades in school determine whether we have the potential for a bright future, we're not living according to our real potential. Instead, we are living according to circumstances. If a student wants to improve their grades, what should they do? Visualize that they are successful in school. Visualize they get high grades. And if they completely give themselves over to this vision, they will find the strength to make it happen. Imagine starting your own business and within the next 6 months, no customers show up. Would you think of quitting? I sometimes had people tell me they would. Why? Because they're not obeying their own vision of success. When we aren't focused, doubt sets in. We start to doubt because results aren't changing as fast as we would like. Remember, results can only change effectively if we have a clear vision that we can follow. You should never allow the physical world to control the sort of vision you hold. Whenever you hold a clear vision inside your mind, you'll have to learn to obey it. Mentally and emotionally, you already possess your dreams. From that point forward, you'll simply start to work on giving that inner vision outer expression in the world. This expression comes about through inspired action. Again, a clear vision will inspire you to do certain things. These things, in other words, would be new forms of action that will help you to get what you want. If you don't believe this process works, I'd recommend you take a pen and paper and honestly ask yourself the following. What could I do in this very moment in order to get closer to the realization of my dream? I can guarantee you, as long as you stay calm and have an open mind, you will receive ideas. Once the ideas come, what are you going to do? Nothing? Or are you going to act on them? Let yourself be inspired. It's something you consciously choose to do. You either have an open mind or a closed mind concerning this process. Living from imagination permits you to see possibilities you might have missed up until this point. Living from your senses limits the possibilities you see and ultimately your own potential. Earlier in this book, I asked how you would describe yourself. I'd like to follow up on that and advise you to see yourself as a creature of magnificent imagination. The form you take on inside your own imagination, meaning the results you see and accept within your mind, ultimately seek to be expressed through your body, quite literally. When we look in the mirror, we see our bodies. This body can't just express whatever you see in imagination. However, instead, it can be like a temple through which your imagination can express itself within the bounds of the dimension of time and space. Have you ever had a dream where you could fly? That's what I mean. Who knows, maybe people can fly. There are stories out there claiming people were able to levitate and fly around. Personally, I've never done that myself or witnessed it happening. However, in imagination I'm able to fly, so theoretically we might be able to find new methods of flying without the need of current airplane models. It all depends on the desires of humanity. It depends on what we want. The person who honestly desires to find new methods of aerial transportation without the need of current designs surely will create a lot of headway in this area of life. This is just another example that shows people like this would not just be operating from their senses. After all, our senses probably tell us this is impossible. In fact, if you think about it, many of the stuff we now use was once thought of as being impossible. A good example of this are the Wright brothers. They were one of those early pioneers working on the first airplane. Obviously, before they were alive, people were already curious about flying through the air and working on it to some extent. But the Wright brothers are simply a famous example. When they were working on their first airplane model, it went wrong many times. But did you know one brother would always tell the other, "Don't worry, brother, I can see her fly successfully through the air." This example may be outdated by now, but it does show us yet again these brothers were living from their imagination and not according to their senses. If they did, they would have been like the great majority of people who believed it's impossible to fly through the air, so let's not even try. Why are certain people able to live their dreams and others aren't? Sooner or later we have to come to the conclusion that it's got nothing to do with the physical world, but everything to do with how people use their minds. By this I mean how certain people use their imagination. It depends on the visions they hold, and then we can see the fact all of them know exactly what they want. They are holding on to their vision by using their will and giving it everything they got in order to realize their dream, in order to give expression to their desires. The most important hint I can share concerning this chapter is that we must live from our imagination, not according to our senses. Use your senses to understand the physical world around you, but we have to obey our own imagination so bigger and better results can be achieved throughout our lifetime. Most people are so hypnotized by the physical world and their current results that they never consider these ideas. I do, and it's one of the reasons I decided to write this book and decided to share this right now through this audio file. So really think about it. You can live according to your senses or according to your imagination. The main point here is that you have the capacity to build a vision of whatever you want. And then it's like I said in an earlier chapter, it's like making a movie. The vision, your dream is like a movie inside your mind. And then you might need other people's help in order to express the dream. But then you can see how that dream is slowly but surely turning into a reality for yourself to experience and for others to experience as well. And this all happens over a certain amount of time. So really think about this one idea and really consider, am I living through my senses alone, or am I going to live through my imagination up until this point in life? Have you been living through your senses most of the time and therefore believe that most of your dreams are impossible? Or are you willing to start living from your imagination so you can discover the newly inspired ideas you would need in order to shift your entire reality itself? Chapter 4. Our Senses. As I explained in the chapter about our sensory factors, it's important not to live according to those senses alone. I don't mean you have to become reckless. Our senses help us understand the world around us and avoid any potential harm or danger. But more often than not, people also use those same sensory factors to determine whether they are on the right track or not, whether something is possible or not. Everybody has dreams. Everybody has some idea for a better life. But since our dreams tend to be much more different than our current reality, we have a tendency to assume it's impossible to realize our own goals in life. What you want to learn is to obey your own imagination, to place your mind on your dream, and simply become conscious of the inspiration you receive by concentrating in this manner on your dream. If you do, you'll notice these newly inspired ideas will shift your current reality. That is, only if you act on them. Answer the following question and you'll figure out for yourself whether you're making this mistake in your own life. If that is the case, it will also help you consciously notice when it is happening from this moment on. Now, are you letting your current circumstances and or your past influence your thinking? Are you letting these aspects determine if something is possible for you or not? If so, write down what you're thinking in those moments. Write out what you think is currently holding you back. Now clearly remember that you do have the option to focus on your dreams instead. This is a choice you have to consciously learn to make. Now the summary is as follows. If you revisit the map explaining your mind and carefully look at the picture, you will see exactly what I mean when I wrote this chapter. It needs to dawn on you that we either live according to our dream, by the vision we mentally hold inside our minds, or we live according to what our senses dictate, and therefore can't see how we can outgrow our current circumstances.